When Amelia Harper and her husband David first entered the world of fostering, they had no idea how profoundly it would change their lives. Living in a quiet suburb in the Midwest, they were a couple driven by a shared belief in compassion and the desire to help children in need. After years of marriage and the realization that they could not have children of their own, they decided that fostering would be a way to give their love and support to children who needed it most. Amelia, a high school counselor, was naturally nurturing and had spent years working with teenagers, guiding them through turbulent times in their lives. David, on the other hand, was a science teacher with a love for inspiring young minds. Together, they wanted to create a safe, welcoming space for children to thrive, even if only temporarily. However, nothing could prepare them for the day they met Aiden, a 7-year-old boy with big, curious eyes and a shy demeanor, who would soon become an irreplaceable part of their world. Aiden had been placed in the foster care system after a turbulent childhood, marked by instability and loss. He had experienced more in his young years than any child should have to endure. His parents, though well-meaning, had struggled with various personal challenges that prevented them from providing a stable home. Aiden had been moved from one place to another, never staying long enough to feel secure or truly loved. When he first arrived at Amelia and David's home, he was guarded and distant, reluctant to believe that this new house could be any different from the others. From the moment Amelia welcomed Aiden into their home, she sensed his pain and uncertainty. She could see that he carried the weight of his past on his small shoulders, and her heart ached for him. Amelia and David had prepared a cozy room for him, painted in calming shades of blue, filled with books, and a soft bed that they hoped would make him feel safe. They knew it would take time, patience, and endless love to break through the walls he had built around himself. In those first days, Aiden was quiet, his actions tentative and cautious. He barely spoke and often kept to himself, as though trying to remain invisible. Amelia and David were careful not to push him, understanding that he needed to feel comfortable in his own time. Amelia would leave little notes of encouragement around the house, hoping he would read them and know he was cared for. Each morning, she would pack his favorite snacks in his lunchbox, guessing at his preferences based on the small clues he left behind. One day, Amelia noticed Aiden lingering near the backyard garden, watching the birds with a look of longing. It was a rare moment when his guard seemed to slip, revealing the vulnerable child underneath. Amelia quietly joined him, offering him some birdseed and telling him stories about the different types of birds that visited their garden. To her surprise, he opened up a bit, sharing that he used to watch birds with his mother when things were better at home. For Amelia, it was a breakthrough moment, a small but significant step toward building trust. As weeks turned into months, Aiden slowly began to feel more at ease in his new surroundings. David, who had a natural gift for connecting with kids, would spend afternoons teaching Aiden about science through fun, hands-on experiments. They built a makeshift volcano in the backyard and watched it erupt with foam and vinegar, Aiden's laughter breaking through the silence that had once surrounded him. For Amelia, hearing Aiden's laughter was like a melody that lingered long after the moment passed. She felt a growing sense of gratitude that he was beginning to feel comfortable enough to share his joy with them. Amelia and David's journey as foster parents was not without its challenges. There were days when Aiden would withdraw, moments when the fear and sadness of his past would overshadow the small steps forward. Amelia would find him sitting quietly in his room, staring out the window with a distant look in his eyes. On those days, she would sit beside him, offering silent support, letting him know he was not alone. They shared countless moments of quiet understanding, where words were unnecessary but love and empathy filled the space between them. With time, Aiden's bond with Amelia and David grew stronger. He began to look forward to their family routines, the cozy movie nights with popcorn, the Saturday morning trips to the local farmer's market, and the bedtime stories that Amelia read to him every night. Slowly but surely, their house was becoming a home for Aiden, a place where he felt safe and loved. Amelia and David were constantly amazed by Aiden's resilience and strength. They knew he carried scars, both seen and unseen, but they also saw the light within him, the potential for happiness and growth. Every small smile, every shared laugh, and every new step he took toward trusting them felt like a precious gift. And with each passing day, they grew more certain that their journey together was meant to be. The moments of joy were woven with moments of pain, as Amelia and David witnessed Aiden grapple with his memories and fears. Yet, through it all, a deep sense of gratitude blossomed within them. They were grateful for the opportunity to love and support him, to offer him a stable foundation on which he could rebuild his trust in others. They cherished the privilege of watching him grow, even if there was no guarantee he would stay with them forever. In this first chapter of their journey, Amelia and David had no way of knowing what the future held. But one thing was clear: they were willing to face whatever challenges came their way to give Aiden a sense of belonging, a place he could call home. They were prepared to nurture him, to hold space for his healing, and to love him unconditionally, hoping that he would one day feel that same love for himself and for the family he had unexpectedly found in them. As the seasons changed and Aiden settled into his new life, Amelia and David looked forward to what lay ahead, knowing that they would face it together, hand in hand, as a family. As Aiden's days in Amelia and David's home stretched into months, he began to let down his walls, piece by piece. The journey wasn't always linear. Some days were filled with laughter and newfound confidence, while others were marred by fear and memories that pulled him back into his past. Yet, with each setback, Amelia and David stood by his side, giving him the space he needed to navigate his emotions. One chilly autumn afternoon, Aiden came home from school visibly upset. Amelia had noticed that he had become quieter over the past week, his laughter less frequent, his smile harder to find. Concerned, she gently encouraged him to talk, sensing he had something weighing on his heart. With a little hesitation, Aiden finally opened up, sharing how some kids at school had made him feel different for being in foster care. Their words had cut deep, reopening wounds he'd tried so hard to bury. As he sat beside her, Amelia put her arm around him, holding him close. She reminded him that he was incredibly brave and resilient, and that no one could take away his worth. She shared her own childhood stories, telling him how she, too, had sometimes felt like an outsider. They talked late into the evening, and Aiden eventually fell asleep on the couch, wrapped in a blanket and Amelia's comforting presence. Over the next few days, David and Amelia made a point of including Aiden in activities that would strengthen his confidence. David invited him to join in simple DIY projects around the house, letting him take the lead in small ways. Together, they built birdhouses for the backyard, each with its own unique design. The pride in Aiden's eyes when he completed his first project was unmistakable. It was a moment of triumph, a small victory over the insecurities that had plagued him. Amelia, too, found creative ways to nurture his self-worth. She introduced him to journaling, gifting him a small notebook where he could express his feelings freely, without judgment. At first, Aiden was hesitant, unsure if he had anything worth writing down. But with Amelia's encouragement, he began to jot down his thoughts and memories, creating a safe space for his emotions to unfold. As the days turned into weeks, the bond between Aiden and his foster parents grew stronger. He began to see that family could be built not just on blood, but on trust, respect, and love. The kindness and patience Amelia and David showed him felt like a balm, healing wounds he hadn't known could heal. He found himself looking forward to family dinners, where laughter and conversation flowed freely. He discovered joy in their weekend hikes, where David would teach him about the different types of trees and plants, sharing his love for nature. One weekend, they decided to take a trip to a nearby town known for its beautiful lakes and trails. It was a place Amelia and David had visited many times, but it held a new excitement now that Aiden was with them. They packed a picnic and set off early in the morning, eager for a day of adventure and bonding. For Aiden, it was one of the first real family outings he could remember, and he felt a strange yet comforting sense of belonging as they drove through the winding roads together. At the lake, they rented a small rowboat, with David guiding Aiden on how to paddle. Aiden's face lit up with a mixture of excitement and concentration as he learned the rhythm of rowing. Amelia watched with a heart full of pride as he began to loosen up, his laughter echoing across the water as he splashed David with the oar. It was a carefree moment, a taste of the childhood he had been denied for so long. Later that day, they found a quiet spot under a large oak tree for their picnic. As they unpacked the food, Aiden shyly presented them with a picture he had drawn of the three of them. It was a simple drawing, with stick figures and colorful scribbles, but it was a gift that held immense meaning. Amelia's eyes misted over as she looked at the drawing, feeling the depth of Aiden's gratitude in that small piece of paper. "Thank you," he whispered, barely audible. He looked down, fidgeting with his hands as he continued. "Thank you for everything, for being here." Amelia and David shared a look, both deeply moved. They hugged Aiden, assuring him that he was as much a part of their lives as they were of his. It was a turning point, a silent promise exchanged between them, a vow to be there for each other, come what may. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the lake, they sat together in silence, taking in the beauty of the moment. For Aiden, it was a revelation. He realized that, despite the hardship of his past, he was finally somewhere he felt safe and loved. He was learning to trust, not just in the people around him, but in the possibility that he could create a new beginning, one filled with hope and happiness. This new closeness did not come without its challenges. As Aiden continued to grow and heal, he also faced the bittersweet memories of his birth family. He often wondered what his parents were doing, if they ever thought of him, or if he would ever see them again. These questions lingered in his heart, creating a sense of longing that neither Amelia nor David could fully ease. They understood that Aiden's love for them didn't replace the love he still felt for his parents, and they encouraged him to honor those memories, even if they were painful. In the quiet moments, Aiden would confide in Amelia about his fears of being forgotten or abandoned. Each time, she would reassure him, reminding him that he was part of their family, not because of obligation, but because they wanted him there. It was a slow process, but Aiden was beginning to believe her words. Their connection deepened through these shared moments of vulnerability, creating a bond that neither time nor circumstance could break. For the first time, Aiden felt that he didn't have to fight his battles alone. He had Amelia and David, two people who loved him without condition and who had given him the gift of stability, something he had never known. As winter approached, bringing with it the holiday season, Amelia and David prepared to make this time of year special for Aiden. They decorated the house with lights and ornaments, filling each room with warmth and cheer. Aiden helped decorate the tree, his eyes wide with wonder as he hung each ornament, some of which had been passed down through Amelia's family for generations. One night, as they sat by the fireplace, David told Aiden stories of his own childhood holidays, filled with laughter and mishaps that brought smiles to all their faces. They toasted marshmallows, laughed at David's silly jokes, and shared a warmth that transcended the challenges of the past. For Aiden, it was a holiday season like no other. It was filled with joy, laughter, and the undeniable feeling of belonging. He began to understand that family was more than the circumstances that brought people together. It was the love and care that held them close. The season served as a reminder that he was not alone in his journey. He had Amelia and David, who had given him not just a home, but a family. And as he drifted off to sleep on Christmas Eve, he whispered a silent wish that this happiness, this love, would be with him forever. In that quiet, snowy night, Aiden's heart softened further, allowing the love he had found to take root. It was a new beginning, one he would hold close, as he stepped forward into a future filled with promise. As the months went by, Aiden's sense of stability continued to grow. However, a deeper challenge began to surface: his struggle with trust. While he had begun to feel comfortable and cared for, he still harbored fears of loss and abandonment that he couldn't quite shake. Every so often, he would retreat into silence, his mind and heart pulled back into memories of the life he'd once known. Though Amelia and David had done everything to show him love, Aiden had learned in his own painful way that love wasn't always permanent. It was during one of these silent spells that Aiden found himself caught between conflicting feelings. On the one hand, he wanted to fully believe in the warmth and security Amelia and David offered. On the other, a small voice inside warned him that if he let his guard down too much, he could be hurt again. His experiences in foster care had taught him to rely on himself, to not expect anyone to stay. But with Amelia and David, the yearning for something different was growing too strong to ignore. One evening, Amelia decided to take a different approach to reach Aiden. She noticed that every time he faced difficult emotions, he would withdraw, retreating to his room as if protecting himself from pain. So, instead of letting him sit alone with his thoughts, she brought a few old family albums to his room and gently knocked on his door. "Hey, Aiden," she said softly. "I thought you might like to see some pictures from when David and I were kids. We all have stories, you know? Some good, some tough. I thought it might help if you got to know ours." Curious but still guarded, Aiden let her sit beside him. They flipped through the albums, and Amelia shared stories from her own childhood. Her silly Halloween costumes, her teenage awkwardness, and the times she, too, felt out of place. She was open and honest, not shying away from the difficult moments in her past. Her vulnerability seemed to resonate with Aiden, who listened intently, occasionally nodding or smiling at her stories. In sharing her own experiences, Amelia helped Aiden see that he wasn't alone in feeling vulnerable or afraid. She showed him that trust wasn't something that had to happen all at once. It could grow slowly, built on moments of honesty and connection. It was a small step forward, one that eased the tension that had been lingering in his heart. Their bond deepened further one particular weekend when David invited Aiden to join him at a local animal shelter where David volunteered occasionally. The shelter was home to numerous animals, many of whom had been abandoned or neglected, and they spent the day feeding and caring for the animals. Aiden quickly grew attached to a small, scruffy dog named Rusty, who seemed as shy and cautious as Aiden himself. Rusty had big, trusting eyes and followed Aiden around, sensing a kindred spirit in the young boy. As they were leaving, the shelter manager mentioned that Rusty had been there for months, waiting for a family to adopt him. Aiden's eyes filled with longing as he looked at the dog, and in that moment, he saw a reflection of his own journey. He knew what it felt like to be waiting, hoping that someone would choose to love him. The connection he felt with Rusty was immediate and deep, and for the first time, Aiden felt a sense of purpose, a desire to care for someone else who had been through similar hardships. Amelia and David noticed his attachment to Rusty, and, after a thoughtful discussion, they decided to bring the dog home. When they told Aiden the news, his eyes lit up in a way Amelia hadn't seen before. For the first time, he felt like he wasn't just a recipient of care. He was now also a giver. Rusty, with his wagging tail and trusting eyes, became a source of comfort and companionship for Aiden, helping him further open his heart. With Rusty by his side, Aiden felt emboldened to share more of himself. He started talking about his own memories, the fragments of family he could still recall, and the fear that he'd be separated from Amelia and David too. He confessed to feeling like a burden, as if by needing them, he was somehow asking for too much. His voice trembled as he spoke, and Amelia wrapped her arms around him, reassuring him that he was loved, not because of what he could give, but simply for who he was. In these conversations, Amelia and David reminded Aiden that they chose him, just as much as he had chosen them. They emphasized that being a family meant embracing each other's fears, dreams, and everything in between. They told him that his place in their home was his alone, that nothing he did or said would change the love they felt for him. This reassurance, given consistently and without conditions, began to seep into Aiden's heart, replacing doubt with a budding sense of self-worth. Despite the progress they were making, one night, Aiden's fears resurfaced in an unexpected way. He had overheard a conversation between Amelia and David about their plans to travel to a family reunion, and panic set in. The thought of them leaving, even if only for a short trip, triggered his old anxieties. He feared that if they left, they might never come back. In his mind, abandonment was a familiar story, and he struggled to separate his past experiences from his present reality. Unable to articulate his fears, Aiden withdrew, avoiding conversation and keeping to himself. Amelia, noticing his sudden change in behavior, approached him gently, encouraging him to share what was bothering him. After a tense silence, Aiden finally admitted his fear, that he was scared they would leave him behind, that one day he would wake up and find himself alone. Amelia's heart broke as she listened, realizing just how deeply rooted his fears were. She held his hands and looked him in the eyes, speaking with conviction. "Aiden, I need you to know that you are our family. Nothing, no trip, no distance, could ever change that. When we leave, we'll always come back for you, just as you are always here for us. You have a home with us, for as long as you want it." Aiden's eyes filled with tears, and for the first time, he let himself believe her words. It was as though a weight he had been carrying for years had been lifted, replaced by a warmth that filled every corner of his heart. That night, as they sat together, he felt a sense of peace that he hadn't known before. Rusty curled up beside him, offering silent support, and Aiden felt surrounded by a love he could finally start to trust. In the days that followed, Aiden's bond with Amelia and David deepened further. He began helping around the house, eager to show his gratitude and contribute to their home. He took on small responsibilities, from feeding Rusty to helping David with the yard work, taking pride in being part of the family's everyday life. Each act of care, whether big or small, was a way for him to express the love he was learning to receive. Through these acts of service, Aiden found healing. The tasks became symbols of the family they were building together, a way to cement his place in their lives and to show them that he, too, was invested in this newfound connection. It was as though he was weaving himself into the fabric of their lives, creating bonds that were as resilient as they were genuine. As autumn gave way to winter, Aiden's heart felt warmer than it ever had before. He began to trust in the love Amelia and David had shown him, a love that had endured despite his fears and uncertainties. And with Rusty by his side, he felt the courage to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Aiden's journey was far from over, but he was no longer walking it alone. He had found a family who understood his scars, who loved him despite, and because of, his struggles. In those quiet moments by the fireplace, with Rusty at his feet and Amelia and David by his side, Aiden knew he was finally home. For the first time in his life, he felt secure in the knowledge that he was loved unconditionally, and he was learning to believe that he was worthy of that love. As winter settled in, bringing crisp mornings and cozy evenings by the fire, life felt almost dreamlike for Aiden. The warmth he experienced in Amelia and David's home, the comfort of Rusty's companionship, and the joy of shared moments had become the foundation of his everyday life. But as the season unfolded, an unexpected test of resilience emerged, challenging everything he had come to hold dear. One chilly January evening, just as they were finishing dinner, Amelia received a phone call that caused her to visibly tense up. Aiden's senses were immediately on high alert. He had learned to read the subtle shifts in her expressions. When she hung up, Amelia hesitated before turning to Aiden with a gentle but serious look in her eyes. "Aiden," she began softly, "I need to talk to you about something important." She paused, gathering her words carefully.
Your biological mother has reached out to the agency. She's expressed an interest in seeing you.
The room fell silent. For Aiden, the news was both a shock and a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. His mother, a figure he had both loved and feared, remembered and tried to forget, was suddenly a presence again. A part of him had longed for this, for the chance to reconnect with his past, yet he couldn't deny the turmoil it stirred within him. He looked at Amelia, searching for reassurance, struggling to understand what this meant for the life he was building. Seeing the confusion and fear in his eyes, Amelia reached out, placing her hand over his. Aiden, nothing will change between us, no matter what you decide. You are a part of this family, and that will never go away. This is your choice. If you want to see her, we'll support you. And if you don't, that's okay too. We're here for you, no matter what. Aiden sat in silence, her words washing over him as he tried to process the sudden upheaval. The thought of reconnecting with his mother stirred memories, some tender, others painful. He remembered moments of warmth, of bedtime stories, and whispered, "I love yous." But he also remembered the fear and chaos that had marked his early years. For so long, he had believed that those memories were behind him, that he was safe from the instability that once shadowed his life. That night, as he lay in bed, Aiden struggled to reconcile the emotions swirling within him. He couldn't shake the hope that maybe, just maybe, his mother had changed, that she was reaching out because she wanted to make amends. But he was also terrified of reopening old wounds, of facing the possibility that she hadn't changed at all. Amelia and David had given him stability, love, and a sense of belonging. Could he risk jeopardizing that for a past he had worked so hard to leave behind? After days of contemplation and quiet conversations with Rusty, Aiden finally confided in David about his fears. Sitting in the living room with a mug of hot cocoa in hand, he shared his mixed feelings, voicing the doubts that had been weighing on him. "I don't want to hurt you and Amelia," he admitted, his voice barely a whisper. "You've given me so much. I'm scared. If I see her, maybe it means I'm betraying you somehow." David's face softened as he placed a reassuring hand on Aiden's shoulder. "Aiden, family isn't about choosing one over the other. It's about understanding where you come from and where you're going. Whatever you decide, know that we're proud of you and that you don't have to face this alone." David's words were a balm to Aiden's fears, granting him permission to explore his past without feeling as though he was abandoning his present. He realized that Amelia and David's love wasn't conditional. It was something he could count on, even as he navigated this difficult decision. Buoyed by their unwavering support, Aiden made his choice. He would meet his mother, not out of obligation, but out of a need to confront the unanswered questions that lingered in his heart. The meeting was arranged at a neutral location, a quiet coffee shop nestled in a nearby town. As they drove there, Aiden felt his heart pounding, the mix of anticipation and anxiety making it hard to breathe. Amelia had offered to stay outside, giving him the space to reconnect with his mother on his own terms. She hugged him tightly before he walked in, whispering words of encouragement that steadied him. Inside the cafe, he spotted his mother seated by the window. She looked different than he remembered. Older, with lines on her face that hinted at her own struggles. Her gaze softened when she saw him, and for a moment, they simply looked at each other, the silence heavy with years of separation and unspoken words. Their conversation was halting at first, each word laden with both caution and hope. His mother spoke of her regret, of the choices she had made and the ways they had hurt him. She shared her journey, explaining how she had worked to overcome her struggles, how she had always thought of him and missed him. As she spoke, Aiden listened intently, searching her face for sincerity, feeling the conflicting pull of love and resentment within him. At one point, she reached across the table, her hand trembling as she asked, "Do you think you could forgive me, Aiden?" Her voice cracked, the vulnerability in her eyes stark and unguarded. Aiden looked down, his mind racing with memories, emotions, and the newfound wisdom Amelia and David had instilled in him. He remembered their words about family, about how it wasn't always a matter of blood, but of choice. He realized that while his mother had given him life, it was Amelia and David who had taught him how to live it with love and courage. Taking a deep breath, he replied softly, "I think forgiveness is something that takes time. I can try, but it's not something that happens overnight." He paused, his heart steadying. "I need you to know that I'm happy now, that I found a family who cares for me and loves me. They're my home." His mother nodded, tears glistening in her eyes, and for the first time, Aiden saw a reflection of his own pain mirrored in her gaze. It was a moment of understanding, not a resolution, but a tentative first step toward healing. They sat in silence, letting the words sink in, acknowledging the path they both had yet to walk. After the meeting, Aiden stepped outside to find Amelia waiting, her face lighting up as she saw him. She pulled him into a hug, and he felt a wave of relief, knowing that he was returning to a place where he was loved unconditionally. In that embrace, Aiden realized that while his mother was a part of his story, Amelia and David were his future, a future built on trust, love, and the resilience he had discovered within himself. In the days that followed, Aiden found peace in knowing that he had faced his past with courage. His relationship with his mother was still a delicate, unfolding process, but he no longer felt weighed down by the what-ifs that had haunted him. He knew now that he didn't have to choose one family over the other. His heart was big enough to hold both gratitude for his past and love for his present. Amelia and David, true to their word, stood by him every step of the way, their pride in him evident. They celebrated his bravery, reminding him that his journey was his own and that they were honored to be a part of it. Rusty, as if sensing the shift in Aiden's heart, stayed close by, offering his quiet support with each wag of his tail. And as winter turned to spring, Aiden looked ahead with a newfound sense of resilience. He knew that there would be more challenges, more moments when his trust might be tested, but he also knew that he was no longer facing them alone. He had a family who believed in him, a community that loved him, and a future filled with hope. In embracing his past and making peace with his present, Aiden had discovered the true strength of family, the unconditional love that held him steady, no matter where life took him. As spring warmed the air and flowers began to bloom, Aiden stood at a place he once thought unreachable, a place of inner peace. The journey to finding his family and healing his heart had been anything but easy, marked by moments of doubt, fear, and profound courage. Yet now, as he looked around the home he shared with Amelia, David, and Rusty, he understood that he was truly, deeply loved. With each passing day, Aiden grew stronger in his sense of belonging. He and Amelia would spend afternoons in the garden, planting new flowers and watching them grow, much like Aiden himself had blossomed under her care. David continued to nurture Aiden's curiosity, teaching him everything from science experiments to life lessons that Aiden held close. Rusty remained his steadfast companion, a symbol of loyalty and comfort, and Aiden often whispered his secrets to him, knowing that Rusty's gentle, understanding eyes would always listen. One warm evening, as the family sat together around the dinner table, Amelia made an announcement that filled Aiden's heart with joy. They had decided to legally adopt him, making him their son in every way that mattered. For Aiden, it was the final piece of a long journey, a promise that he was no longer just a guest in their lives, but a cherished member of their family. Tears filled his eyes as he hugged Amelia and David, feeling the depth of their love and commitment. The adoption ceremony was small and intimate, held on a bright spring morning. Aiden stood beside Amelia and David, holding their hands tightly as the judge confirmed what they already knew in their hearts. They were a family. Friends, neighbors, and even a few of David's students gathered to celebrate, and Aiden's heart overflowed with gratitude. For the first time, he could finally say with certainty that he was home. In the days following the ceremony, Aiden felt like he was living a dream. The past, with all its painful memories, no longer haunted him as it once had. Instead, it had become a part of his story. A story of resilience, forgiveness, and the strength of love. He knew now that family wasn't always the one you were born into. Sometimes, family was the one you built through trust, compassion, and the willingness to be vulnerable. As the sun set on that day, Aiden sat on the porch with Amelia and David, reflecting on his journey. He felt a sense of purpose growing within him, a desire to give back and to help others who might be facing the same struggles he once did. He knew that his story had the power to inspire, to bring hope to those who felt lost or unloved. And as he watched the sun dip below the horizon, he realized that his journey was just beginning. He had found his family, but there was so much more he could do with the love he had been given. If Aiden's story has touched your heart, if you believe in the power of love, resilience, and the importance of family, consider subscribing to our channel. Here, we share stories that inspire and remind us of the beauty and strength found in even the most challenging times. By subscribing, you join a community that celebrates kindness, compassion, and the courage to rebuild. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join us on this journey of love, hope, and transformation. Together, let's continue to spread messages that make the world a little warmer, one story at a time. Thank you for being a part of our family.